Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Daily Signal's Top 10, where we are counting down the top news stories of the week, many of which have gone underreported, or should I say misreported, by the mainstream media. I'm Genevieve Wood, and joining me to break down all of these stories is our Daily Signal senior contributor, Jarrett Stepman, and Daily Signal commentary editor, Daniel Davis. Welcome back, Daniel.
Thanks so much.
Good to have you here. All right, let's get right into it. Number 10 this week, the media politicizes Gold Star families.
I was stunned when I came to work yesterday morning and brokenhearted at what I saw a member of Congress doing. A member of Congress who listened in on a phone call from the President of the United States to a young wife, and in his way tried to express that opinion. He's a brave man, a fallen hero. He knew what he was getting himself into because he enlisted. There's no reason to enlist. He enlisted. And he was where he wanted to be, exactly where he wanted to be, with exactly the people he wanted to be with when his life was taken. That was the message. That was the message that was transmitted. It stuns me that a member of Congress would have listened in on that conversation.
So a lot of folks covering this story this week. Jarrett, what did you make of it?
Yeah, I mean, it is really sad to see this particular thing get politicized. I mean, it's really heartrending to see this, especially when it comes to those who have been killed in combat. And I have to say, I thought that the press conference with Secretary Kelly would have ended this controversy. I mean, he made I felt a really moving statement about his experiences with his own son who had been killed in Afghanistan. But this thing just kept going. I mean, Congresswoman Wilson made, I thought, some very bizarre statements about, oh, now I'm famous now that the president's coming after me. And I kind of hate to see this thing continue to go on because, of course, it's a very serious topic when young soldiers get killed in combat fighting for their country. And Kelly has, I thought, a great perspective on it. I urge everybody to listen to the press conference. I thought he did a really good job coming from somebody with personal experience with this that, frankly, these are the 1%. These are the soldiers who go into combat that most Americans, unfortunately, have very little contact with. So I'm just kind of sad to see this be a huge political controversy.
Yeah. Well, but Daniel, it goes to just showing, I mean, people who, in Congress included, who don't like the president will literally take any issue to go after him and make that point.
Yeah, well, and I thought John Kelly's point about we started listing things that used to be sacred, that were considered sacred, and things that are no longer considered sacred. And the last thing that should be sacred is a Gold Star family and a phone call home to a family that lost their son or daughter at war. So I think he's taking the high ground here. You have to hope that members of Congress on the Democratic side start to really put their own in line and to realize that this is sacred stuff.
And hopefully the media will do the same. Yeah. All right, let's go to number 9. This is a big story this week, which I don't think got near as much play as it should have. ISIS capital in Syria fell to U.S.-backed forces. Take a look.
We're moving forward. Progress is slow and dangerous. We move to the old city, where the war against ISIS rages. Some 3,000 militants trying to hang on to Raqqa, their de facto capital, and their last major stronghold.
As you can hear, the battle for Raqqa is now raging, with US-led coalition forces taking the fight on the ground. You can hear the sound, the crackle of gunfire every few minutes.
So Daniel, this story is big, and like I said, I don't think it got the play that it should have. I mean, this is a major win for U.S. forces, is it not?
Yeah.
And back forces, I should say.
Yeah, 2 years ago, even a year ago, we were sort of our jaws dropped at ISIS expanding its massive territory, ruled over about 11 million people. At the height of their power, they had about 30,000 fighters. That's down to less than 7,000 now. So they've lost most of their territory. They lost their capital of Raqqa. So this is a big win, and for the president especially. It's been U.S.-backed air power that has helped the Kurdish and Iraqi fighters take back control of these regions. Definitely encouraging. What we need to hope for now is stability reestablished in the region so that the refugee crisis can come to an end, so that people can come back to their homes and relieve some of the pressure that has really hit Western countries. I think that's really needed. And the other thing that comes to mind, ISIS is retreating back into the sort of underground warfare. So this is not over, and we need to be focused on winning the long-term battle of ideas, because that's really where this battle is fought.
Yeah, I mean, this signifies breaking ISIS and the Islamist ideology physically, but we need to always remember this is about the ideology. It's about what these people represent. I mean, it's about these ideas that, we would hope will become hated around the world so that no person would carry out what these people do. Because whether they have an actual physical state in the Middle East or they're embedded in other countries, this is a dangerous threat to, frankly, civilization itself. And so it's good to see that, I mean, a few years ago, I think a lot of people were saying this couldn't have happened, but it is, and hopefully it means that there will be some long-term retreat from this hateful ideology that has unfortunately been so prevalent over the world.
Well, and it shows that we've got to stay in these things and make sure that we're in them to win them, so to speak,
absolutely.
and that it is unfortunately a long war, but if they're going to stay, we have to stay, and this time it's been paying off. All right, number 8 this week, the border wall prototypes in California are being put up. Let's take a look.
A total of 6 contractors, 8 prototypes, so there'll be 4 concrete prototypes and then 4 of other materials.
And they have 30 days to complete. The last working day will be October 26th.
And then we will go into a testing and evaluation phase.
It's an industry standard to build a prototype to test and be able to evaluate a potential wall before we actually put it into play.
So a number of companies vowing to put these prototypes together, Jared, and then I guess we'll see, they'll pick one, and then that company will get to build the fuller wall. What you see here, how long is it going to take to figure out which one's best?
Yeah, I mean, that could take a while. And I think what we've seen, too, with the wall that's currently in place, there are sections of wall, but a lot of them, it's just completely inadequate. I mean, this is basically like a chain link fence that anybody can just walk through. I think that's something very important to note, that not any wall will suffice in this case. There has to be measures so that it can prevent foot traffic, can prevent vehicles. So, some people say, well, there's already some wall up. I would say, well, actually a lot of that wall is not sufficient. It hasn't kept, anybody who just wants to walk across can step across a fence. So it is good that they're developing wall technology that will actually do the job, more than just say, well, this feels good that we've got something up. No, we want something actually physical there that will stop a lot of these problems with illegal immigration that we suffered over the last, 30, 40 years.
Yeah. Daniel, as you looked at this story, do you see this encouraging Congress to think about, we're going to make a decision soon on what we're going to do next on immigration?
On the Republican side, I see willingness, but the Democrats have, even especially in the Senate, have been clear that they're not open to a DACA fix that includes border security, which is crazy. How can you not
What happened
be
to
in
the deal with
favor of border security?
and the president? What happened to that deal that was supposedly struck a month ago?
It's probably dead. I mean, go back 10 years ago, and Democrats were willing to talk about dealing on this issue of having more border security. How can you be against border security? It's almost as though they're openly saying we are pro illegal immigration. Like, we actively want to encourage it, which is insane.
That's right. I mean, such a big change from just, frankly, a decade ago when people like Senator Harry Reid was talking about border security. This was something that was a bipartisan idea. Hey, we need to keep our borders safe. One side may want more immigration or less, whatever it is, but we all agree, well, we should have some kind of border security. And that idea is now such a hot button itself. Shows you kind of where we've gone in our
politics. And it shows you
politics.
where their political fortunes lie, which is in creating this constituency.
Right, that's very good point. All right, let's go to number 7, and this dealing with Apple, the big software giant. Apple is pulling a pro-life group app that it had allowed to be in its online store, in the App Store. So on this one, Daniel, explain for people first.
Yeah.
It was called the Human Coalition, I believe was the name of the group in the app,
Yes.
right? Explain what the app did, if you can, and why it's a problem that Apple pulled it.
Well, it's a pretty, in terms of apps, activism apps, this is a pretty benign app. It was basically a prayer app that all it did was enable people from around the country to be alerted to different women who were seeking abortions at particular locations and at particular times, so that you could just see it and pray about it. And people would
it didn't
be
give
there.
them their names, though. It didn't.
No,
Their
no.
identities were kept private.
Kept those private. But it was just, helping people to pray. And there were people there on the ground, obviously, who were contributing this to the app, this information, and they were there to, to counsel and pray for the women. But the pro-choice groups came out hard against this. Apple decided to remove the app. And it's almost as though they see this app as a threat to their cause.
Well, if they don't believe that prayer works,
well, true.
What are they worried about?
Right. Right.
I mean, this doesn't make it. And I was looking at this story, Jared. It's talk about, a violation of like First Amendment and so on. I mean, nobody's forced to put this app on their phone, download it, nothing. It's just. And I'm going to guess Planned Parenthood, I didn't check it out, but Planned Parenthood probably has an app of its own of some sort that I'm sure if they do, Apple would make available.
Right. I mean, it's another case of, frankly, a big corporation that's kind of put itself in the kind of culture war. It's embraced a lot of left-wing causes. I know we've reported on Apple that's donated to this group, the Southern Poverty Law Center, which has targeted unfairly a lot of conservative organizations as hate groups and lumping them in with actual white supremacists and Nazi groups. And I have to say, Apple has definitely stepped into these culture wars and has put its finger on the side of the left. And that's, something that, look, as a conservative, we defend the freedom, we defend, corporations in many cases, but they're not always on the side of conservative causes. And certainly in this one, they've shown that they're on the other side of these things. So, I think a lot of people, this is a lot of the agitation at a lot of these big companies in corporate America. That
they succumb to political pressure.
They succumb to political pressure, and they do it so quickly when these left-wing activist groups come after them.
Well, here's another story where political pressure or public pressure came into play. There was an Anne Frank Halloween costume that has now been pulled. Take a look at this.
A Halloween costume featured on a website is gaining a lot of negative attention this week.
Fun.com. Not so fun as far as this is concerned. They're based in North Mankato. They run the website HalloweenCostumes.com. Halloween costumes. These guys were on our show last week on HalloweenCostumes.com. You apparently used to be able to find a costume of Holocaust victim Anne Frank. So this is the photo that was shown with the original listing that shows a girl smiling, wearing World War II era clothing. A spokesman for the online retailer apologized, said the costume has been pulled there.
Okay, so Jared, this is a historical costume, if you will, but why would you pick Anne Frank as a historical costume for Halloween?
I don't know. Honestly, I kind of think look, these Halloween companies, they produce so many, they have to find some kind of idea, something a little different. The company itself said, well, we want to do it for historical reenactments, but it was definitely billed as something that was a Halloween costume. Honestly, it's a free country, they're a private company, they can do what they want. I can't see many people dressing up as Anne Frank for Halloween. It's a little tasteless, given it's Halloween, people are having fun. There are definitely tasteless costumes out there, but I frankly don't think there's going to be a run on Anne Frank costumes anytime soon.
No, well, a lot of the stores have actually pulled them. But Daniel, there was another, along with this story, there was a costume out there called The Wall, which is basically, a outfit that looks like a big brick wall that says The Wall on it. And there's some people on the left that don't like that either because they think it's Donald Trump's wall.
Yeah, hopefully people don't start to tear it down.
Especially when somebody's wearing it, right?
Maybe very uncomfortable.
I don't know. I might have to get one of those for this year, just to wear around the streets of DC, just for fun. All right, let's go to number 5. This one on a Texas chain, one of my favorites, Whataburger. A Whataburger employee refused to serve police officers who came in during their shift, just wanted to place an order for a late night dinner, and she said no way, and started yelling at them and cursing at them. Daniel, this is crazy.
Yeah. Well, as a fellow Texan, great fan.
Well, you know how good Whataburger
is. It's so good.
Yeah.
And so it's even more unconscionable that a cashier would deny police officers service. Thankfully, the person was fired by Whataburger, which is a win these days. Unfortunately,
right.
Not necessarily something that automatically happens. So Whataburger definitely knows its customers. It's set in the Texas, Arkansas region there, but definitely a win.
Well, and apparently, Jared, this woman was screaming at them because she claimed that her boyfriend had been beaten up by police a week or so before that, right? But then
right. I mean, it was a little bit. It didn't seem to be true, and it was a very confusing story. And frankly,
well, then they watched the police tapes and found out it wasn't true at all.
Well, I mean, maybe that's why she's a little angry about this whole thing. She was called out for being wrong, and we've seen these incidents take place in other establishments around the country, and I think a lot of the time people are moved out. But look, if you work in a restaurant or whatnot, the police they're protecting you. I mean, right. I people who've worked in the service industry, you never know when somebody's going to break in, somebody's going to try to harm your business. The police are on your side.
Yeah, what if they called and we're being broken into right now, and the police said, well, I'm sorry, we're just not going to come.
Right, we're not going to come because we don't like you or we're opposed to it.
For granted.
So they take it for granted.
But what's noteworthy is their response, though, was incredibly calm, and it's like they get this hate all the time, and they're used to it. So they said, just tell us you don't want us here and we'll go somewhere else. But thankfully, the Whataburger folks are apologizing to them in person.
And a little smarter than some others.
Yeah.
All right, let's go from Texas to Florida, where a man there he's boycotting the Jags and the NFL, and he got somebody to actually fly this across the stadium. Take a look at this clip.
I am asking everybody to boycott the football game. Do you believe in your country? Do you believe in the Star Spangled Banner? If you don't stand up for it now, you won't have it in the future. If you don't like being in this country, get out of this country. If we boycott them and we hit them in the pocketbook where it hits them, before long we'll have them on both their knees.
Well, that is certainly one way to make your voice heard. He's got the free speech right to do all that.
He definitely does.
It's not cheap, though.
No, it's not. Clearly, this man has a lot of passion in what he's doing. And there are a lot of people around the country right now have a lot of passion and antipathy toward what's going on in the NFL. I think we've seen recently that the ratings are down about 7.5% from just last year. I mean, there's been some major change this year in large part because of these anthem controversy and the kneeling. You know, yes, there are other issues with the league. There's bad games. Some of the stars are injured. We've had a lot of teams that have been mediocre. But let's be honest, a lot of this is driven by the fact that the sport's become politicized. It's become unfun. It's become something that it just makes you miserable watching because you think about the protests that are going on. And it's something that, look, the NFL can't afford to lose these kind of fans, the most passionate people. And this is really going to hurt them long term if these people are tuning out. These people are actively working against them, tuning out the games, telling people to stop watching. They're in trouble.
Daniel, they're taking actually the passion they used to employ on behalf of their teams in many cases and now using it to try to stir up controversy against the NFL.
Yeah, it's. I just want to celebrate free speech when I see this because it's such a creative use of of the First Amendment, writing things in the sky. Only in America.
Well, and apparently the same man had developed bumper stickers and the like. So if you're in the Florida area, you can perhaps get one of these bumper stickers if you agree. All right, let's go to number 3. And here we have a Mississippi school has decided to pull To Kill a Mockingbird from its shelves.
So, To Kill a Mockingbird, there's some language in there that people don't like, and some people apparently feel it makes people uncomfortable. So, do you agree the book should go?
Of course not. I believe that administrators need to teach students about history, and classic works of literature are supposed to make students feel uncomfortable. That particular book helped really ignite the civil rights movement.
So, Daniel, you wrote about this for the Daily Signal. You had a piece on this. And I should correct something. I said they didn't actually pull this book from their shelf. It's still in their library, but they pulled it from their 8th grade students reading it as part of their curriculum. So why is this a problem with you?
Well, the vice president of the school board said that makes people uncomfortable. I remember reading this in the 9th grade aloud with my fellow students, bleeping out the racial epithets. And it was uncomfortable. I was uncomfortable. Everyone was uncomfortable. And I doubt that Harper Lee wrote the book without the intention of making people uncomfortable.
It's a cozy bedtime story.
Right.
Yeah.
This is not a bedtime story. So, this was one of the, just from a personal perspective, one of the most fruitful books I think middle school students can read. You learn about courage and standing up for what's right and sacrifice, personal sacrifice. I think part of education is teaching students to understand what evil is and to stare it in the face and to be able to, be made feel uncomfortable, but then to move beyond that and to learn to do what's right, to have a thick skin. And if you protect and try to shelter students from evil, from just seeing evil, you're not actually protecting them. You are, condemning them to a life of weakness and mediocrity. So I think this is a mistake. Students need to be exposed to this kind of thing, especially when it's a classic that won the Pulitzer Prize. It's almost universally celebrated now. Thankfully, some people on the left have spoken up and said, this is ridiculous. Obama's education secretary tweeted against this. So I'm hoping that people on both sides really stand up and say, look, this is a great book, teaches students great things.
Jared, my guess is, and this certainly isn't the first time that you've had controversy over a book that's being read in public schools, but we're just going to see more and more of this kind of thing. It's kind of like the statue and the debate over monuments.
There is a connection here. I mean, to a certain extent, this this is infantilizing younger generations to say we can't even deal with these uncomfortable things of the past. We can't even discuss these things because they're too hurtful. You might get the wrong message from it. We're just going to ban it and make this go away. And frankly, the issues about justice and human nature and things like this and history, what this country's about, you can't just make these things go away. They're there. They're part of who we are. So to say, well, we should just pull these books off the shelves and make this environment where you don't have to deal with these really tough issues that you may be faced with in your own life.
Right.
When these issues come up, you are now completely unprepared. You have no experiences to draw from, and I think you may make the bad decisions that other people have made in the past. And I think that's the problem with all of this movement, the statues, the books. I think it's a tragedy for future generations. We're letting ourselves down.
And it just fuels the whole microaggression safe space phenomenon, right? When you're not exposed to anything offensive ever, then you see something that is offensive, you just explode because
can't handle it. Everyone's got to live in a bubble house.
Everything is just destructive. So.
All right. Well, here's another destructive story, shall we say? Should an illegal immigrant get an abortion on taxpayer dime? Take a look at this.
They want to use this girl, and what they're trying to do is use her as sort of a Jane Roe 2.0 to internationalize Roe versus Wade, and they're declaring that she has a constitutional right to have a taxpayer-funded abortion, which the last time I checked, the Constitution only applies to Americans.
So my understanding, Daniel, this young woman crossed the border not too long ago, illegally crossed the border, and now taxpayers, I guess in Texas, are going to be told you have to pay for her abortion.
Yeah, it's pretty bad, and it actually, the judge's ruling, thankfully, was blocked by a higher appeals court ruling, but they were supposed to have a hearing on Friday, so we'll see when we hear about that, how it went. But the judge was trying, it's like the judge was actively saying, you have got to let, to take
she had
this
a constitutional
woman,
right. How
had
did she have a constitutional right when she's not a
came
citizen?
here illegally? Exactly, and that's the dangerous precedent that this sets up, is it basically, it would invite people to come here illegally to get free abortions. That's there's no precedent for that in our law, but if this is upheld, that's what we're looking at.
And for those of you who don't know about this story, basically she's 15 weeks pregnant, we believe, and in Texas, the law says people can have abortions up until 20 weeks, but after, which is why there's a rush here, because if we're delaying the courts, they would say you're past a date. But the larger issue here, beyond the life issue, which is number one, is this idea of why would we be saying this is a constitutional right for someone who is not a citizen?
And even if it was a constitutional right, we wouldn't have to pay for that. Right, it's a separate question still. Even if it was a constitutional right, the Constitution doesn't say the government has to pay for anything like that. So, yeah.
There's something also very morbid about rushing to get this decision done before, the due date, so to speak. There's something very morbid. And look, I mean, it also connects our general problems with illegal immigration. These kind of thorny issues come up in the law because we can't control our borders, because we do have this problem with illegal immigration, and issues surrounding the Constitution, things like that all come into play when we can't control our borders.
All right, well, here's another story that will probably outrage you. A federal court has now said that a World War I memorial cross must be torn down. Here's why.
The Memorial Peace Cross should be part of a historic trust and should not be removed, transferred, or changed. The Peace Cross has been a part of the Maryland Historic Places. It needs to be nominated to the National Register.
So we're not talking about Confederate statutes now, Jarrett. We're talking about Christian symbols that just are appalling, apparently, to some folks.
Yes.
What's going on?
Yeah,
here?
this was actually a federal court that had decided that this cross would be removed. They put a plywood box over it now because this thing can't even be seen by the public. And I have to say, this is really incredible. This statue's been there for over 100 years.
And put up by the American Legion, right? So this isn't a government-sponsored memorial.
Right? No, it's not. And that's with a lot of these memorials, they were not government-sponsored. They were put up by a private group that decided to have this display. And I got to say, I really hope this court hasn't seen Arlington National Cemetery, where we have crosses on every single grave, more or less. This is it's amazing.
Or Jewish,
or Jewish. Exactly. Are these public displays going to be got rid of? Are they no longer going to be acceptable in the public sphere? And I think that's something that I think there are a lot of Americans that are so deeply worried about this issue. I think it's it's all tied to what we fear about the statues. We fear about the role of religion in public life. I think a lot of this is all kind of lumped together, and I think there are a lot of people that see this as kind of a symbol of that. And it's incredible that, again, this thing has been there for over 100 years. Very few have said, "Oh, we shouldn't have this." Now we're going to be taking it out of our history, of a memorial for those who were killed in World War I. I mean, that's a horrible thing.
Yeah. If the courts didn't realize this was unconstitutional in the first 200 years of our country, it's not likely that the Constitution they wrote prevents this kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, do you think this is going to get taken to the Supreme Court? I would assume.
I do. I think before this thing actually gets taken down, I think this will make it to the Supreme Court, because this is a big issue that has propped up before in increasing amount. But I do think the Supreme Court is going to hear this one. I mean, my hopes are that the statue will stay, and if it doesn't, that some private group will move in and try to reclaim this. But it's hard to see this. It really is. To me, it's a tragedy to see these things come
And whenever
down.
something like this occurs, and you're just looking for other groups to go, okay, let's go attack on against
Exactly.
others as well.
Yep.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us this week. Now, before we go, we want to say happy birthday to someone this week who celebrated their birthday. It is the mother of our producer. Morgan is our producer, but her mom's name is Susan, and sometimes Susan submits story ideas for this program, which we are very thankful for. So happy birthday to Susan.
Happy birthday.
All right, we want to leave you today with a clip from President Trump earlier this week in a speech that he gave at the Heritage Foundation's President Club. Enjoy, and we hope you have a great weekend.
It's an incredible honor to be here tonight to celebrate this really wonderful foundation. Just a few months from now, you will mark the 45th anniversary of this esteemed institution. As Americans, we have inherited a special legacy of freedom, culture, laws, traditions, and values. Your organization is named the Heritage Foundation because you understand that our glorious heritage is the foundation of everything we hope to achieve. You understand that human progress must be built upon a firm foundation of timeless truths. And the most important truth our founders understood was this: freedom is not a gift from government. Freedom is a gift from God.